independence of the company. So what's the deal with that?
Every day, people use Cisco U to bridge the gap between where they are and where they want to be. Welcome to the Cisco Learning Network. Let us walk you through some of the powerful features available to the community. The personalized homepage is focused on featuring the content you follow and engage with on a daily basis, as well as the valuable learning resources offered to support you in your learning journey. The training videos section quickly helps you find IT training videos on a variety of technology topics to help you in your Cisco certification studies. Find listings for live IT train webinars and events that you can attend in person. Learn on the go and stay a part of the community wherever you are with a mobile-friendly experience. Your community hub allows you to easily ask questions, share ideas, and connect with other members as you prepare for your certification exams. Sign up for upcoming live technical webinars by checking our latest events listings for continuous lifelong learning. Let us be your resource, guide, and community as you continue your career journey. The Cisco Learning Network, your lifelong learning IT community.
So what are some of these benefits of certification? We talked about, is IT right for you? Is this is the kind of thing that you're getting into? But once you're in, why would you get certified? So you could learn the technology perhaps without getting certified, but why do you want to be certified? And we're going to go through a lot of these things in the slides coming up, and you're going to see how some of these words in this big word cloud here kind of fit in and really spell out that value for certification. But a lot of times it is show me the money. It's coming back to how exactly is this really going to benefit me? And just to let you know that the average US network engineer has a salary increase of 15% with certification. That's always going to vary, obviously, but that certified individual, and we'll see why, we'll talk about why in a few slides here, that certified individual does bring a lot of gravitas, and there is a need for that person, especially that person who is truly passionate and who's truly on that lifelong learning journey. And that is why certification is so valuable to employers and thus to us, the individuals. And that brings us to confidence. Once you have that knowledge, you're confident in when someone asks for your opinion, when someone comes to you and says, what is the best way? Or in your opinion, how do you think we should solve this? Or what solution should we go for? Or what technology should we use in this particular area? Your answer with that certification, with that credential, brings you exude that confidence, and you can say, well, in my certified and my expert opinion or my professional opinion, this is what we should do and this is why. And you can bring that why over there, and then people look to you to say, I trust this person, I will use them, they've brought me good answers in the past, they clearly know what they're talking about, they're a key and critical member to our team. And then there's that value. It is that 360-degree value. That's not just about what it does for you, because if it's giving you knowledge and it's giving you confidence, when you're in that interview, when you're doing that job, when you're putting out that metaphorical fire in the data center, you are more attractive to your organization, your knowledge, your skills, you're delivering instant value, which your employer says, this is fantastic. This person is someone who I can count on to deliver when we're tactically, when we're reactive, and I can also count on this person to be more forward thinking, more of a technologist. They bring up ideas, they bring up thoughts of how we can do things differently in our organization, how we can better use technology. And then no matter what organization, what company you're in, you have someone, some group of customers, some group of stakeholders, be it their internal or their external, and you bring value to them because you understand what they need, what they're going through, and how technology can be used to better improve that. So you're able to say, you know what, this is a challenge that our customers, our users, let's use the word users, are seeing. This is how we might better improve that. That again goes back into that cycle, into that 360 degrees, where it's giving your employer back that value, because maybe now they're more competitive, they're making more money, they're delighting their customers. And then that's back to you because you look good in doing that. And that could lead to bonuses, lead to promotion, and that kind of thing. And something I want to point out, and I mentioned it before, that lifelong learning. We don't want to look at certification as the end of our journey. We don't want to say, you know what, I got certified, I'm good. We should always be learning. And that's one of the things about IT. I've been at Cisco now just over 23 years. I've liked this area of technology around operations, like network operations, including automation, programmability of networks. And that didn't really exist when I started. So certainly network operations existed, and we were using technologies like Telnet and SNMP and then SSH to kind of manage these devices. But we were doing it all very manually. We were connecting to device by device, and operations has greatly improved, or I would say innovated and transformed with this idea of net DevOps, or the bringing in of automation, bringing in of programmability into this. So even something as kind of basic as network operations has transformed over the years. And we're always seeing that this industry is always going to be changing. So if you like that change, if you like being part of this kind of forefront of how we are, as a society are doing a lot of things now, this is the place for you. And you do have this opportunity to always be learning as you go, always be taking on those new skills. And Cisco, as part of our certification program, we have a program called Continuing Education that as you learn those new skills, you keep your certifications current, so you never lose that credential that's so valuable to you. So I hope you enjoyed this brief introduction to Cisco certifications. There's a lot more to come. You're on a fantastic journey. And I think if you're that person who likes being that agent of change, who likes solving those tough problems, who likes thinking like a detective, and who likes interconnecting people and things, you are absolutely in the right place. Thanks. I look forward to talking to you as a certified individual soon.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's event. I'm excited to be here with you today. Today we'll be talking about LM Studio and the phenomenal power, the phenomenal AI power that will bring to you without the cloud at all. A couple of quick housekeeping notes and introductions. So let's see, today's session will be recorded, and the recording for the session will be available immediately after the event. And that'll be available on our Cisco Learn with Cisco YouTube channel, as well as our Learn with Cisco social media platforms and the Cisco Learning Network. Any folks who have registered for the event today will receive an email with information on how to access the recording and the resources shared today. And if you haven't registered ahead of time, you can just hop into any of our Learn with Cisco social media channels and find the link to those resources as well. And let's see. Oh, for questions throughout the event today, we will be leveraging Slido. And there's a QR code on your screen now for how to join the Q&A for the event today and submit any questions you might have to our presenters as they go through the session. And then we'll save some time to answer as many of those questions as we can towards the end with both of our speakers. Also, one more note on accessing the resources. You'll see two other QR codes in the corners of the event today here. And one of those QR codes will bring you right to the post-event discussion thread on the Cisco Learning Network community forum that we have for this event. And the slides from today are available for download directly from that event discussion thread as well. So feel free to pop into that discussion thread, grab those slides, ask follow-up questions, connect with the community further, or also on the Slido event, we have a link to that same discussion thread. So plenty of opportunity to get the resources and the event recording today. And with that, I'd like to introduce our two speakers, my good friend Hank Preston, Distinguished Architect with Learn with Cisco, as well as Julian Khalifa, my new friend from the LM Studio team, who works on the go-to-market and operations group. I'm excited to have you both here with us today. Hank, I was thinking, it's been a little while since you and I have had the opportunity to do a session like this together. And I was thinking, when we first started doing sessions together, it was probably back in the 2017, 2018 days, and you were with the DevNet team at the time. And at the time, you were working to bring developer skills and workflows and mindsets to the network engineer audience that we have with learning and certifications at the time, the CCNAs and the CCIEs. And it's really fun to have you back, bringing these new skill sets to the community today as well. And I really appreciate your passion for doing that and your enthusiasm for continuously pushing forward and pushing the community forward in this space. So thanks for joining and making time for us today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's been probably the favorite part of my career has been the opportunity to kind of be at the edge of explore new concepts, technologies, and ideas that are coming into the network engineering space. As you mentioned, right, we spent lots of time kind of as network automation and software-defined networking came through. And then before we knew it, artificial intelligence kind of popped up there in kind of 2022, and I've been right back at it. It does feel a little bit about like going back to subnetting school and learning the fundamentals of networking, but now it's the fundamentals of something new. And I'm excited to be sharing this with our community and really excited to share it with you and having Julian and from LM Studio here to help us out because they're one of the companies kind of at the forefront of this new AI space and helping engineers like ourselves get to know this new technology.
Yep, thank you and welcome, Julian.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Yeah, excited to be here. Excited to be chatting.
Awesome. All right, Hank, with that, I think you're going to get us started with why this is so exciting for the audience, right?
Absolutely. That is the plan. So thanks so much for that. And so let's go ahead and dive into the session and the content that we have today. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to bring this to the community in today's webinar format is because I've been talking about this type of a topic at events like Cisco Live for about a year now. And I realized that I was so passionate about this and would hear so much from engineers about the interest in this type of a topic that I wanted to make sure it was available to our entire community, even the ones that can't make it to our in-person events. And so these virtual events give us a great opportunity for that. In today's content, we've got kind of a handful of agenda items we're going to go through. We'll start out with the question of why local LLMs and exactly what that is and how it should fit into what you're after on your own journey into artificial intelligence. We're then going to bring Julian back, and he's going to introduce us to LM Studio and the company and the people behind it a little bit. And then we'll actually jump through how do we pick models? Because when you use a public cloud service like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, the model comes with the service. But when you're going to run something locally, it's up to you to find and evaluate and pick what model makes the most sense. So we'll talk a little bit about how you can approach that challenge in your journey. After that, we're going to spend a good chunk of time on as many demos as I can fit into the event today. Most of these demos focus in on the different types of things network engineers have to do as our day job and how artificial intelligence can be brought into that to make our jobs a little bit easier, more interesting. And then we should have plenty of time for questions. So please, if you've got questions on this topic or AI in general, submit those into the system and we'll bring Matt back in at the end to kind of answer those, and we'll get all of those answered as we can. So let's jump right into it with why should we consider a local LLM? And the distinction here is this is a large language model, that's what LLM stands for, that's going to run directly on your laptop or your desktop workstation that's there. This is different than using, as mentioned, like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, where the LLM is running in some cloud-based data center service that you're taking advantage of and using through maybe a web interface or a mobile application. This is going to be directly on our laptop. So why might we want to do that? The first of the reasons that I always bring up is this one here. There are so many public cloud AI services that are out there. It's almost as bad as kind of the digital streaming options, right? And you having an account and paying for a service on every one of them can get quite expensive. And oftentimes we're just trying to learn and understand what these things are for, how they work. And so I personally don't have subscriptions for many of the public cloud services. And I've often found myself kind of in the middle of experimenting, learning how something works, middle of a deep discussion. Maybe we're going back and forth on the latest spanning tree limerick, or maybe a haiku about bridging loops. And I get slammed with this type of a pop-up that comes through. Oh, hey, you've exhausted your free limitation. If you'd like to keep chatting, feel free to see plan and subscribe or increase your plan rates. So this is the first reason to consider local LLMs, is you can avoid all of these as a service limitations where you can just kind of continue to chat, continue to converse, because the only resources that you need to run these large language models, to interact with the AI is just right on your laptop. So all those limitations go away. The second reason I always go through is the security and privacy reason. When you use, as soon as you send a prompt, which would be kind of the question or the submission that you send into the AI tool, as well as the response that comes back, right? You've now issued those off to the cloud provider for that LLM service. They're not yours anymore, right? You've kind of released those into the public mindset. And so depending on what you're having a conversation about, you may want to keep those prompts and those responses to yourself. If you're deep in a discussion about how to properly handle some sort of an RFP conversation you're having with a partner, or if you're working on revising and getting iterations through some network configuration script or an automation playbook that you're building, you may not want those to show up in the next version of the public cloud model that's been trained. Or you may not just want to keep those from a data confidentiality perspective to yourself. And so by running the LLMs locally on your laptop, all of that security and privacy, I will say, is pretty much handled, right? I'm a realist. As soon as you put anything into a computer, like who knows what might happen. But the vast majority of the security and the privacy concerns can be mitigated by simply running the LLMs on your hardware, on your system. And so this drastically reduces kind of that particular risk that's in the space. My next reason for using a local LLM is kind of that experimentation and learning phase. You don't need the most powerful nuclear powered data center powering your AI model if you're simply at the hello world phase of your journey. You're trying to experiment with different prompts and what the result is, or just understanding what is and isn't possible with AI, or maybe you're starting to do some AI development, right? And you're kind of at that very basic functionality. For those use cases, you don't need those large models that are kind of spanning across hundreds of thousands of GPUs and data centers. And so again, lower powered, private running on your workstation is often all you need when you're going to be iterating on the exact same prompt over and over again, just trying to get it right. And so having that ability to kind of have a separate development, have a separate testing and learning environment is a huge advantage that you get with these local LLM capabilities. And then lastly, offline access. Sometimes the public cloud isn't available. My slide here is kind of an image of a plane taking off with kind of that trailing cord, because despite the fact that it's pretty amazing these days that when I'm in a plane, right, I can get Wi-Fi access that's often pretty decent. You still will occasionally find a time when you don't have access to the internet. About a year and a half ago, I was actually flying back from Europe and happened to be on a plane that didn't have Wi-Fi access for the flight. And I had planned, like specifically planned, to spend those 8 hours on the plane doing some work on a project that required AI capabilities. But I didn't have to worry about it at all, because by using LM Studio and the large language models that I downloaded, I was able to be completely functional on the airplane without any Wi-Fi access. I'll also say not having the Wi-Fi access made me even more productive, because I wasn't constantly distracted by checking in with everybody else off the plane. And so I could really focus in on it. And so offline access, because that internet isn't always going to be there, and you don't want to be reliant on that for every single thing that you're after. And so with these reasons in mind, so these are the use cases why supporting a local LLM probably makes sense and is something that you should have in your tool set. I want to bring Julian back in to kind of introduce us to LM Studio itself and the folks in the company behind it. So Julian, take it away, man.
Awesome. Hank, thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here, excited to be chatting with the Cisco community. I have the pleasure of introducing LM Studio, talking about what we're all about. So I think, at the highest level, LM Studio is software to run AI locally on your computer. So what does that mean? You go to lmstudio.ai, download LM Studio, pick whatever large language open source model you want to run on your own hardware. And then from there, you're able to chat with it in the same way you would, a ChatGPT or a Claude, but you are actually running the model on your own computer. So to Hank's point, whatever I enter into LM Studio, whatever information I'm sending to that model is only being processed locally. It's not leaving your device. It's not hitting a server somewhere else. There are no usage limits. You can hit it as many times as you want. You're never going to run into a paywall. You can also use it to power other applications. So LM Studio comes with a built-in server. That means that you can make API calls. We use the same format as OpenAI, but also have our own SDKs. So if you want to build and test these local models for your own projects or to swap out a cloud-based model, you can do that as well. It's a really great tool for experimenting, whether you're kind of earlier in your journey and you just want to be able to start chatting with local models, with open source models, or you're all the way, a developer, you want to build with these things. LM Studio tries to hit all of those points and gives you everything you need. So we're both running the models on the back end for you on your own computer and giving you the interface to actually interact with them. And there's a lot more customization you can do as well. So similar to like a ChatGPT project, you can build your own system prompts and workflows that, again, all live locally on your own computer. You can, adjust how the model is going to behave. You can play with different knobs like temperature. You can really get into the weeds if you want. Or again, you can just use it as a local assistant where the data that you're putting in is not leaving your device. So, that is kind of the goal of LM Studio, is to be a place that everybody can go, software that anybody can use to use these local models, use these open source models, make it as easy as possible and give you a different way to use AI on your computer. In terms of hardware and, what LM Studio can run on, really runs the gamut. So we operate on Mac, Windows, and Linux. Most newer laptops can actually run these models. So again, you're not sending your data to a cloud server farm somewhere else. It is your own computer being a computer and running these models for you. But I think there's a misconception that, these file sizes have to be massive and these models are huge, but they really kind of run the spectrum. So you can have really small models that run quickly on older computers, or you can have much larger models if you have like full GPU setups. But all to say, if you have like an M1 MacBook or a PC with a GPU, you should be able to run these models locally on your own computer. Hitting on kind of the last few final points, Hank, if you go to the next slide, thank you. So just kind of background about us as a company. We are based in New York City, a small team, Series A, growing this product, really excited about local and open source AI. LM Studio is completely free to use, both for personal and at work. So you can use these models with maybe data that you wouldn't be able to put into a cloud-based system. Sometimes I will have client materials or something that I would not feel comfortable using with a cloud-based model, sending to the cloud. And that's a really great use case for local AI. The application does not come with any models built in. I think that's kind of the beauty of it, is that we are model agnostic. We work with all of kind of the open source major file formats. So, if you have like a GGUF model running on Llama CPP or MLX for Mac, we can run those major models on your computer. And also worth noting that you don't need an account to use LM Studio. So you can download it, you can start talking and using these models without ever signing up. We do have the LM Studio Hub, which is a great place to share things, to build, to get in touch with the LM Studio community. But the application runs locally, and we're really big on privacy, security. You should own the data, you should own the experience. So no account is required. And as I mentioned before, we have both the OpenAI compatible API that you can hit and swap in, and also SDKs that you can build with. So again, we try to kind of hit everything and make it this one-stop shop for using and building with local AI. We'll pause there. Hank, anything you think that I haven't mentioned that I should? Otherwise, happy to pass back to you.
Yeah, no, I think you hit the key pieces there. This is an exciting spot, and Julian and I don't know, it's been about a year or so that we kind of first started conversing about LM Studio, as I was exposed to it because it was part of one of the Cisco Network Academy courses on Introduction to Modern AI, and I was excited about how quick and easy it was to get started with local LLMs. And I dove right into it, and I saw it as a really valuable tool for every engineer out there trying to be on that same journey that I'm on. And so I'm going to pick it up from here, and we're going to kind of pick up from that point where Julian mentioned you've installed LM Studio on your desktop. Now's the time to kind of find and choose an LLM that you're going to run and use for your interactions. And I'm going to start with this quote from the paradox of choice, right? When we have too many choices, the very fact that there's a chance to get it wrong makes us feel uncertain. And when I first started looking around at local LLM and the models that were out there, I really felt this, because if you go up to Hugging Face, and if you're not familiar with Hugging Face, it is kind of the GitHub of AI models. It's a place that people can download and upload and share LLMs that either the large companies have built, or maybe you yourself kind of download a model and do some fine tuning, and then you can upload it and share it with the entire community. And I grabbed this screenshot about a week and a half ago as I was preparing for Cisco Live Melbourne. And we are now over 2 million models available up on Hugging Face. 2 million models, right? I've spent 45 minutes just scrolling through Netflix trying to decide like what movie to watch. I can't imagine trying to navigate through 2 million models to decide, like, is this one good? Is that one good? Try this one. Should I try that one? And this is where that paradox of choice can really fit in. And so this was one of the things that I really liked about LM Studio, is it doesn't make you go to Hugging Face and find it. You can use the integrated model search that's built right into LM Studio to find and download models. And while it will allow you access to like the entire 2 million model library on Hugging Face, it initially focuses in on this kind of staff picks filter, where it hones in and kind of picks a handful of models that the team behind LM Studio has evaluated and said, okay, this model seems functional. It does what it's supposed to do. They've done some testing to determine is its capabilities function. They've documented it pretty well. And you can kind of see some details about it. So it's a great place to start. Is just this kind of initial staff picks list of models is a place to kind of look at and find ones to stick with. Now, each model will be presented with a model card. And on the model card, you're going to see a lot of information. And I think it's really important to understand kind of how to read this card and make choices based on what you see. And so the first thing is up at the top, you're going to find a list of who the model provider is and what the model name is. And so in this example, we see the OpenAI, that's the provider, GPT OSS 20B for 20 billion parameter model. And so this is OpenAI has provided what's called an open weight, kind of like the open source type of a model, where they've trained a model and said, okay, here's something that anybody can go ahead and grab. And so these are the same people behind ChatGPT. And so they've used some of their same knowledge and technology and concepts to put this model out there for anybody to take advantage of. After that, you see a list of capabilities. And so the capabilities are important to understand because different types of use cases may need a different model that can do different things. This GPT OSS model has been trained for tool use, which means this could be used with MCP servers in order to kind of reach out into the real world and gather information. This model is also a reasoning model. And so it doesn't just kind of immediately start responding. It thinks about your query and then starts responding, and that's a tunable feature. There's also a capability called vision, which allows a model to actually look at an image and process the image. This model doesn't have that capability. We'll see that in a demo in a little bit. After that, you'll see the format that the model is available in. This one's available in GGUF, which is a cross-platform model, and it kind of runs in the Llama executable runtime area. And that could be used on Windows or Linux or Mac. And then this model also happens to be available as an MLX model. I like, as a Mac user, right? I'm a Mac user. I like finding models that are MLX capable because that means it's been kind of processed and customized so that it'll run even better on the Apple Silicon, that M1, 2, 3, or 4 chip that's in place. Now, I can use either one of them, but if it's an MLX one, I know it may perform a little bit better on my laptop. After that is the parameters. And so this is it's kind of a measure of the complexity of the neural network. And at the basics, that kind of tells you how smart or how good that model might be at kind of complex tasks. But I caution you to put too much weight in just the number of parameters. Smaller parameters and smaller models are sometimes better and more tuned at specific tasks. And so this is an area where kind of experimenting with large parameter models, small parameter models can be useful, but it is a metric that's good to kind of keep an eye on and see what's there. After that, you get the family, the architecture the model belongs to. There are dozens of different architectures out there, but a handful of those architectures are the ones that we see more and more often kind of coming up as each model's kind of become fine-tuned on some base that's there. And so if you know that you've worked really well with let's say the Llama architecture or the Gemma architecture, you'll have familiarity and you can kind of see some consistencies between those. And so it gives you a little bit of kind of the relationships a model may have with other models that are there. And then lastly is the model size, which is different than the parameter count. The model size is the actual file size that you're going to download. And then LM Studio very kindly will tell you whether your computer should be able to run this model. And so in this example, my computer has full GPU capabilities for this model. And that's useful to know because that means if I download this model and I try to load it up into my computer, I should be able to do that without too many extra time or impacts or risks that it'll overwhelm my computer. So this model would be a good one. If the model was too big, LM Studio would say, okay, you may not want to run this one, or you may have partial offload possible. And so I generally tell people, like, stick with ones that show green here, right? You want to have the full offload possible for the best performance that's in place. And so that's the details on the card. I put this little cheat sheet together on the different architectures that I think is a useful thing to keep in mind. And this shows each one of the most common architectures you might see from a model, and then who came up with it, right? Who's the releaser of that architecture? And then the focus and strengths that these models tend to be used for. And as the asterisk said, that's not Hank saying that, oh, the Phi model is really good at reasoning and edge-based deployments. I got that right from the model providers. And so I take that a little bit with a grain of salt. By all means, kind of do your own experimentation, see what they're good at. But this will give you the ability to kind of know where they're coming from. So if you see a model up on Hugging Face or in the LM Studio search and it's listed as a Mistral model, well, you'll know this comes from Mistral AI, or the original model comes from Mistral AI. which is a startup based out of France that has been kind of really doing some interesting things in the AI space. Or maybe you're looking at the Gemma models, and those come from Google, or Quen or DeepSeek, and these come from Alibaba and the DeepSeek companies from their origins. This is important for a bunch of reasons. One of them comes down to, if you are going to be doing work with these LLMs for your company or as part of your day job, I really encourage you to kind of look and see if your IT department, your InfoSec, has put out policies and rules or advice on which models might be deemed appropriate for your internal corporate usage. I know at Cisco, our IT team and our security team does thorough research on all of the architectures, all of the individual models that are available, and they give us recommendations as employees about which models we can use with different types of data. And so don't overlook or don't forget to kind of look at the model, the architecture, who it comes from. And then if you're going to be doing this with something that is kind of work related, it's a good idea to kind of check with your internal InfoSec policy to see where these things land. Now, with all that in place, I'm going to end with just a handful of what I call Hank gestions related to this. LLMs and getting involved with AI can be very, very overwhelming, particularly when you start to do it local and you see those 2 million models that are out there. And so these are some things that I suggest if you're just getting started. First up, avoid the community models from any sources that you don't know. The reason is you don't know how that fine tuning was done. You can take a model that was developed and kind of stamped of approval from IBM or Microsoft or Google, and then anybody can take that and fine tune it, right? Add additional parameters, do additional training to vastly influence the results that model may generate based on different prompts. And so you don't know what's been done to the model. As far as I know, there's no way to kind of peek back under the hood once the black box of the LLM has been generated to see what's inside it. It just comes down to kind of experimentation and seeing what it does. And so, Julian, actually, that's a good question. Julian, is there any way once a model has been released to kind of see what training went into it?
It's a good question. I don't actually know the answer to that question specifically. There probably is, but I would underscore what you're saying there, Hank, which is Hugging Face is an amazing resource, but it's also, people refer to it as a model zoo, in that there's literally millions of things that are there. And so with LM Studio, we try to make it as easy as possible to find the right model for your use case and make sure that you're downloading vetted models. So to Hank's point, I would definitely agree, look for the models that are uploaded by these official model publishers and these labs. Within LM Studio, like Hank mentioned, you can download directly from Hugging Face. You don't have to leave the application. And additionally, when you open up model search, the first thing that you're going to be greeted with are LM Studio staff picks. So these are essentially the models that we've confirmed are being uploaded by the legitimate source, the actual model publisher. In many cases, we are working directly with those model publishers. So for an example, when OpenAI put out GPT OSS, we partnered with them and made sure that the model was ready from day 0, day 1, and you could run it on LM Studio. So all to say, that's a really good place to start, is just looking at those staff picks. And there should be a little check mark, a little icon, so that you know that it is from a vetted, trusted source. There are interesting fine tunes, and if you're playing with models and you're experimenting, they can be really fun places to go as well. But for the important workflows and just kind of in general, would recommend sticking to the models from those official publishers.
Excellent. Yeah. All right. Good to get the endorsement on that, because again, some of this has just been my own experimentation on that side. And then the other thing I'll comment on is it's really important as you're testing and learning how these things work, try different models, architectures, and sizes. Just because a model is bigger, right, has 20 billion or 40 billion or 1 trillion parameters, doesn't mean it's the right model for a specific use case. Sometimes a small, specifically kind of built and tuned model for mathematics or for a domain of knowledge is a better choice. It'll perform faster, it'll use less resources and energy. And so very much kind of experiment with these different architectures that are there. And then the other thing I'll point out is we talk a lot, particularly kind of in the network automation space, about open source. Now, open models are what you're going to find up on inside of Hugging Face that you're going to download. And an open model means that it's been made available for people to download and use. That's different than open source. Open source means that you can see the source code and you don't always see what went into a model. Furthermore, an open model that you can download may have a license attached to it that kind of says what you're allowed to do with it for. When you're just doing the learning and experimentation, you probably don't have to worry as much about the licensing. If it's been published up on Hugging Face for download, generally people are happy for you to run it. But if you're looking for a model that you may embed in a product you're going to ship or something that you're going to use internally for support, absolutely look at the licenses, see what you're allowed to do with it, understand kind of its use cases on that side, just to kind of protect yourself and anything you might do in the future. All right, with all that out of the way, let's kind of jump into some of these demonstrations that I've put together. Now, there are a ton of things you can do with generative AI in general, as well as local LLMs. I'm going to focus in on kind of a handful of different types of categories of demonstrations today. And so we're going to look at some basic chat features, just the fundamentals, kind of the hello worlds, the open up LM Studio and the basics on that side. We'll look at some network specific use cases, how we can use local LLMs with LM Studio to tackle things like configuration analysis, network operations workflows. So we'll look at a handful of those. And then at the tail end, we're going to look at a couple of ways we can use LM Studio as part of our agentic AI or our interest in developing AI alongside maybe our other network automation types of use cases in there. So I'm going to try to hit a little bit of each of these as I go forward. We'll start out with kind of just the basics, a conversation and parameters that you have for model tuning. And so what we see here is as mentioned, within LM Studio, I have the ability to kind of access and download onto my laptop a series of models. We can see here, there's a whole bunch of models that I've downloaded onto my machine. And I'm going to go ahead and load up this specific one, this GPT OSS one. Now, I personally really like the GPT OSS one. It's a little bit bigger than what you'll find in some of the smaller models that are out there, but it runs well on my laptop. And it gives me the ability to have kind of this reasoning tuning. And so you see here in the screenshot that's kind of captured is I've set the reasoning initially to low. And so what I like about LM Studio is we don't always have the ability to tune these types of parameters when we're using the cloud-based services, but I can go in here and say, okay, I'm going to set the reasoning to low and I'm going to fire off my first prompt here. And that prompt is going to be, I would like a joke about network engineering. Just give me something interesting, technical, a little safe for work. And so what do we see? We see that it thought for a very short amount of time. It thought for simply 0.00 seconds, and it didn't think deeply about it. It just said, I want a joke about CCNA knowledge. Let's just come up with something. And it came up with a router, or it came up with a joke. Why did the network engineer break up with his router? Because every time he tried to connect, they just kept spoofing and the relationship never got real. Now, I'll leave it up to you to decide whether that's a good or a bad joke. That's kind of in the eye of the beholder. But it's an example of what's possible, right? It just fired off a joke that's there. And so what I wondered is, okay, this was with low reasoning. How good of a joke could I come up with if instead of low reasoning, I kind of tweaked it and I raised it up and said, okay, let's go to high reasoning. Let's like get the best joke possible. And then I asked for another joke. And we'll see, and we'll be able to watch here as the model does this deep thinking about the jokes that might be best for this use case. And it's going pretty quick, but you'll see it it's proposing a handful of different jokes and it's criticizing their own jokes. That one wasn't technical enough. That one wasn't funny. That one's too simple. And it goes on and on as it kind of just navel gazes in its AI way, trying to come up with the best joke. Now, I'll let this run, but I'll admit, right, it never actually came up with a joke. I gave up at some point and I hit the stop button because this is an example of where going to what you think might be the better use case, right? I want the highest level of reasoning. I want the AI model to kind of think hard and give me the best solution, right? With something as simple as just coming up with a joke, right? It just couldn't do it. This type of capability with LM Studio to see what happens when you tweak a parameter is kind of important to a model as the reasoning level is critical, because this is a case where less reasoning was way, way better. If I would have put it at the medium level, I do get some jokes. I don't think that they're necessarily any better than low reasoning, but it takes maybe 2 or 3 times as long. And so having that ability to kind of make the adjustments is really important. Now, moving on, I want to start and kind of talk a little bit about this idea of to start creating what I'll call kind of lightweight agents or mini tools that we can use. Now, when you download an LLM, just by downloading that LLM, all you get is this kind of algorithm that can provide responses. Now, that specific LLM, that specific model could be a teacher, a student, a therapist, a network teammate. And how you differentiate between those is by providing a system prompt. A system prompt gives a persona, gives a role to the LLM that you're working with. And within LM Studio, you can create a library of different system prompts that you can kind of save and flip between. And so here I've created a kind of a basic system prompt that acts as kind of an AI assistant for network engineering, kind of a virtual AI team member. And when I load this up, now I have the ability to say my interactions with this agent will kind of be scoped appropriately, kind of make sure that it kind of is tuned in the way that I'm after. And so I can take that AI assistant and say, hey, I've been asked to come and help a customer of mine with a spanning tree issue. And can you help me get prepared for this meeting? And so there's a few things I might ask for, right? Can you help me come up with a list of questions I might ask them? The spanning tree commands that I might be able to gather in advance as I do this evaluation of the issue that's there. Now, if I'm a network engineer, like I imagine many of you on the webinar today, like you could probably come up with this on your own. But this is one of the values of leveraging AI assistants, is that they can kind of capture this material for you, kind of be kind of a network teammate that you can bounce something off back and forth, or just put the words together in a way that may suit the requirements better. And so in this case, my AI assistant, my AI network team member, puts together a very robust kind of example of the things to look at, provides a list of configuration commands and show commands that I can put together. And I can actually take that and kind of continue this conversation to ask my AI agent, hey, now can you craft me an email that I can send to my customer, asking them to gather the important information or what to look for in the meantime, right? It's a way to kind of iterate and leverage this. And now one of the reasons that local LLM is a good use case for this is all of this conversation, again, is right on my laptop. And so if this is something that is non-public information, right, a problem that a customer of mine might have had is not something that I necessarily want to kind of expose to public ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude. I can do this all on my laptop locally, kind of keep it as private as anything else that's on my machine. Very good use case for kind of diving into these areas. Now, the next use case we'll look at is network configuration analysis. I'm really excited about the possibilities of AI and what it can bring to us kind of in that kind of future of network automation journey. But I still think that as the network engineer, right, I would rather be creating my network configurations, my templates. However, I often want to ask like a fellow team member, maybe a partner, somebody else to kind of QA it, right? Look over the work that I created. Tell me what you think. Give me some feedback. And this is an area where I think AI tools can be really valuable. However, you've probably heard of the concept of hallucinations, right? Hallucinations mean that the answers that come out of the LLM are based on the training data and what seems like plausible or likely answers that fit whatever the use case was. Hallucinations mean that sometimes we get very, very bad answers when we ask a question, or incorrect answers when we ask a question to an LLM. Now, one of the ways we can reduce the risk of that is by providing source documentation along with our queries and say, okay, I want you to answer this question, but find the good data, the right information is contained within this set of source material. This is often referred to as RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation, where the LLM restricts its answer to whatever a provided set of known good data is. And we can use this inside of LM Studio to do something like this, where I go and I grab and I upload all of the VPN configuration documentation from Cisco, so our public documentation. I can add that and upload that into the query and then include that actual configuration snippet that I want to have reviewed. And so now when the LM Studio, when the large language model starts to look at this configuration, compare it to the known good practices, it's not just using the training data that's going to be a mixture of good and potentially incorrect information or outdated information. It's going to restrict its information, restrict its responses to the data from the source material. And so now I can go ahead and kind of look at this and have what I'll call a higher degree of confidence in the responses that come back from the LLM, because I know that I've provided material that should have the accurate details that are in there. And so this response goes through, provides some recommendations, kind of looks at and evaluates the configuration the same way a fellow network engineer or my partner or Cisco TAC might do. But now I can do that kind of on my own using the AI capabilities that are starting to become available. And then once this is done, right, I can even go through and take a look at the citations, the source material that was used to generate that response. And so I can look at the 10 different portions of the documentation that were used by the LLM to provide this evaluation. I like both sides of this, the ability to know that this is the material that's going to be used for the answer, and then even go through and say, no, these are the specific parts of those documentation that were used to generate the answer. Really, really useful for me. All right, hopefully that one's interesting and get your brain thinking about how you could use LLMs for your own kind of evaluations of your configuration. Now, so far, we've kind of stuck with text-based kind of traditional generative AI use cases. I want to talk a little bit about the possibility of using kind of the vision capability that some of these models have. And so we'll see now in this screenshot, I've gone ahead and I've grabbed and looked at the models, and I'm pointing out here the Mistral small model, which has that little eyeball. That eyeball is an indication that this has the vision capability on this LLM. So it's been trained and knows how to look at pictures and process them. Now, just because it's a vision model doesn't mean that it can't also do text, but it specifically is able to look at an image file. And so once I've grabbed that, now I can do something like this, where I can actually provide it and upload a network diagram. I will say, if you're doing this locally on your laptop, right, don't do the largest, most complex network diagrams you have, because processing images does take a lot of kind of processing power. I've had examples where I've uploaded very complex network diagrams, and then the hallucinations start to get really, really kind of intense. But with a diagram like this, a kind of a focused portion of a network diagram, I can upload this into I can attach this to my LLM, provide the documentation, and then start asking questions about that image. Can you describe this image for me? And as it kind of goes through, we can see that it's describing it in text. Like, these are the different devices, these are the interfaces that are available, how these interfaces are interconnected with other devices that are in place. And it's a way to get a textual representation of an image file. I really like this capability for a whole bunch of reasons. As a network engineer, I'm often kind of presented with a whole bunch of documentation that I have to consume really fast, and providing text descriptions of those makes it easier to kind of source and search through that information if I'm looking for something. What we'll also see is I can start to turn that image into kind of actionable data. So here I've now asked for it to generate a CSV file of the VLAN information that was displayed on that network diagram. And so it's gone ahead and done that for me. And I'm highlighting here. It says, okay, there's a user's VLAN 101 with this IP address. And then I'm just flipping back here to kind of show that LM Studio, using this kind of small model right on my laptop, was successful in kind of pulling the data right off the network diagram and generating an accurate CSV. Now, I will reiterate, the success of this is definitely something you want to check. And it usually has to do with kind of how complex and large of an image you're trying to do this with. If the image is too complex, right, it will give you an answer, but it will just start making up IP addresses or VLAN numbers. So this is definitely a case. So if you're going to go down this path with images in your LLMs, check the work, make sure it's being successful. Don't always just count on it, because in other examples, I've definitely seen lots of hallucinations in this type of a use case. All right, one more here. I'm going to dive into kind of log analysis. We often have to process a lot of log information, data, NetFlow, syslog information as engineers, and maybe this might be part of a debugging activity that you're after. And so you can use LM Studio to kind of say, okay, here's a bunch of data that came out. Can you go ahead and analyze that and tell me, is it going? There it goes. And tell me what exactly is going on here. And so in this case, I provided logs from a whole bunch of kind of network state changes that happened in one of my labs. And I've asked it to kind of analyze it, and it's thinking through it. And I actually have the thinking ratcheted up either medium to high on this one, because this is an area where reasoning can be really valuable, because the log files have to be kind of read and processed and kind of put together as one whole. And so we'll allow it to think through this and kind of see how well it does at coming up with what the answer is here at the bottom. There's my cursor. There it is. I'm going to jump it here to the end of the demonstration. And we can see that it's kind of gone through and it did its analysis and came through. We get this nice friendly wrap up at the end, kind of showing what happened. Now, in this case here, it actually did a pretty good job of analyzing those dozens or so messages, identifying what happened. And more than that, it was actually able to kind of deduce the likely cause of what happened in this area. And so being able to process through a whole ton of data up front all at once is part of the LLM is not going to prevent me from having to be a network engineer, do the operations and troubleshooting, but it might be able to help me kind of start to distill and find likely areas to look at as part of the job. And if you've ever had to process through a bunch of log data from multiple network devices, maybe some servers, this should seem quite valuable. And another case, I'll kind of go back, why local LLMs for this? Oftentimes log information, operations data is something that you definitely don't want to send to a public cloud AI. So doing it locally can be really valuable. All right, I'm going to end with kind of a discussion and capabilities here. Oh, let me move forward. Come on. There it goes. My last example here, I want to talk a little bit about kind of one of the most interesting and kind of newest things folks are talking about in the AI space, which is agentic AI and the ability to use tools that reach out into the world and bring them into our AI interactions. And MCP, Model Context Protocol, is becoming the de facto standard for building these agentic AI tools. And with LM Studio, you can either evaluate MCP servers and tools, or you can actually use it as part of your development process of your own. In this example here, we can see that I've got two different MCP servers loaded up in LM Studio. One of them is the Netbox MCP server that's released by Netbox Labs directly. So I didn't build this, it was from them. And then there's the PyATS MCP server that I built myself, that I was kind of testing and developing. By loading these into LM Studio, I can now experiment and see what's possible when in this kind of agentic world where I say, okay, I need to work on router 01. What is its IP address and port? It knows I can use the Netbox tool to reach out and get information about this device. And it's gone ahead and it's looked up the out-of-band address. It's looked up the port. And then from there, I can say, okay, here are the credentials, right? Those credentials aren't stored in Netbox. Can you go ahead and get some more information on this device for me? And it's going to go ask for the default route. And so now using the IP address and the port that it got from Netbox and the credentials I told it, it's going to send a show command off to the device to gather the information necessary for that. So I get this kind of whole ability to kind of see how it works. LM Studio gives me the ability to kind of look at the tool calls, look at the results. If I'm doing development like that MCP PyATS server, I can kind of tweak and tune it to make sure it works as expected on that side. So lots of capabilities, lots of ability to kind of experiment at the development side as well. All right, so with that, I'm looking at the clock. We're down to about a little over 10 minutes left. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Matt back and see what kind of questions we might have from the folks out kind of watching our session today. And if you've got some more, there's still time, I imagine. Add some questions in and we'll see how many of these we can tackle in the next kind of 5-10 minutes. So Matt, what do we got?
Yeah, thank you so much, Hank. Great presentation. And thank you, Julian, again as well. I want to start with, so basically, I also had a poll question running during the session about what the primary benefits folks saw out of running LLMs locally. And privacy, increased privacy was by far the top answer, which is perfect. And I was looking at, I was thinking about that log analysis demo as well. And I can see the value and the importance of being able to run that locally to protect the privacy of the sensitive network data, right? And so I want to start with a question from one of our attendees who also asks, if we use a community model from a source, will any of the work that we perform in LM Studio be visible or accessible to the owner of that community model? How's that handled? And Julian,
yeah, great question. I'll let Julian tackle that one first.
Yeah, totally. Short answer, no. Nothing that you do with that model is visible to the model owner, publisher, uploader. So when you're downloading a model, on LM Studio, when you're downloading a model directly from Hugging Face, that is just a flat file on your computer. It's literally just a bunch of numbers, which are the weights of the model. And then that gets fed into LM Studio. LM Studio makes sense of what those numbers are and turns it into an AI model that you can chat with. But the moment that it's on your computer, again, it's just like a file in the same way if you download a movie, the movie's just on your computer. So any data you put into LM Studio, any outputs from that model are staying completely local. We can't even see it as the publishers of LM Studio. That is also just saved as like a JSON file on your computer. So all to say, runs locally, stays local, nothing is accessible to anybody.
Perfect.
Yeah. The key piece to keep in mind there is, as Julian mentioned, when you download the model, it's a file on your machine. LM Studio is taking advantage of kind of runtime libraries to open and execute that file, but that runtime is all local, right? I imagine one of the things that's constantly looked at by the folks that kind of use these runtimes is to make sure that those aren't compromised and hooks are put in, that as you're running a model, it opens a socket up and starts sending data out to the internet. Like that's where the risk would be. And so those runtimes are kind of protected and made sure that they stay secure. If you want that extra level of security, you could certainly just kind of shut off your Wi-Fi connection, disconnect from the internet, and you'll find that the models still run completely fine, even if you don't have any internet connection available, just to show you that they don't require any external access.
That's perfect validation of that, Hank. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned running things locally, and the question of local resources always comes up around that kind of conversation. And definitely one of our attendees, Harry, was asking exactly about that. And I know in your larger presentation, when you have more time, Hank, you go through some of the system specs. Can you talk a little bit, either one of you, either Hank and or Julian, a little bit about, what are some of the minimum system recommendations? And I'm sure that kind of depends a little bit on the models that are used or the amount of reasoning that is performed. But can you kind of talk about the framework for that kind of consideration?
Yeah, I'll bring the slide back up, James, if you can pop that minimum system requirement slide back up along with us here so folks can see it. I'll talk in general, but then I'd love to have Julian kind of chime in as well if he's got some more information on this. As the slide shows here, if you're on a Mac, right, the recommendation is that we've got 16 gigs of RAM, but less will work, right? And then if you look at Windows, you can see kind of the RAM and the vCPU and what's available across them. What you're going to find is the more RAM you have and the more powerful GPU you have, the larger a model you'll be able to load up and work well on that side. And so that's one of the beauties that I really like about LM Studio is when you're in the model viewer, it knows how much resources your laptop has. And so it will tell you whether this model should be able to be loaded up and function effectively on your laptop. But this is one of the first times in many, many years where the general office worker, the general knowledge worker can actually benefit from a more powerful laptop. Right. For about a decade now, it felt like you could get, if you're just a general office worker using email, Office, PowerPoint slideshows, doing just the basic pieces, almost any off-the-shelf laptop was probably going to be sufficient. I think we're going to be finding ourselves in an area where the general knowledge workers' laptops are going to start to become more powerful, specifically because of some of these AI types of capabilities that are there. And so the minimums are shown here, and just know that the more powerful laptop you have, the bigger models you're gonna be able to load, the faster the processing will happen. So that's kind of my take on this. Julian, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question, and it is something to keep in mind. I'll say models really vary in size. You have really big models that are hundreds of gigabytes, but you also have really small models that you can download and are 1 gigabyte, 2 gigabytes, and can be run on less powerful machines. So kind of speaking on Mac versus Windows, for Mac, we support all M series chips. So if you have an Intel Mac, unfortunately, we don't support those, but M series have the unified memory architecture. So there's kind of the GPU built in. I, for an example, run with like an M3 Pro MacBook, I believe, and I can run like 20 billion parameter models, 30 billion parameter pretty quickly, and those are pretty smart. So I find them quite useful. So that's kind of a sweet spot for me. If you have a PC, we'd recommend that you have a GPU. You can run them CPU only. It's just a little bit slower, but GPU always helps. LM Studio is doing a lot behind the scenes as well to kind of make the most of your computer and whatever kind of architecture you are running. We support kind of a wide variety of chips, of these different operating systems. And to Hank's point, we also want to make sure that you don't download something that is too big and slows down or crashes your computer. So always keep an eye out for that green rocket chip icon that says full GPU offload possible. That means that you should be able to run the model without issue. If you see something that's like yellow, it's kind of like a yellow signal, you might be able to run it. It might be a little bit slow. And then if you see something that says like too large for this machine, would not recommend running that. So within LM Studio, there are those guardrails to kind of help you find the right model for your use case.
Should we spark and open up for debate a Mac versus Windows debate in the chat? Should we get that going? We can open that up in the Q&A and see where it takes us.
Ooh, I would say that if you're on the AI, so as a Mac user, but my son's I'll say it's actually a Linux user on that side. Both are functional, but I will say that the Apple Silicon, those M chips, seem to work really, really well with the processing and the LLM functionality. So if you're just getting started and you're solely picking a laptop just for AI usage, because there's less choices, you don't have to pick which GPU or which family to go into. Mac is the simpler solution. I'm not going to say that you're going to get the highest performance out of it, but it's certainly the simplest choice. There's less things to pick.
Also, we don't pick favorites. We love all of the hardware manufacturers in our office. We have about 1 million different computers, AMD, NVIDIA, everything else in between. So, we try to make sure that it works on everything. Would say,
well said,
you can't really go wrong.
Well said. Perfectly said. Thank you. Okay, we'll go back to the questions here. Julian, LM Studio, does it require a subscription, a license to be able to use? What are the options for folks to be able to leverage LM Studio?
Yeah, good question. So short answer, no. You can use it for free. You can download it directly from our website. It's free for personal use. It's free to use at work as well. It's a change that we made semi-recently to kind of open up the ability to use these models in a professional setting. We do have paid plans. We're happy to chat about those if interested. But the community edition that you can download from our website is completely free to use. There's no license required.
Perfect. Thank you. And with that free version, there was a specific question about this as well. If users are going to then move to a new laptop, can they export their work? Let's see, the specific question is, just their work out of LM Studio.
Yeah, good question. Yeah, you can. So, everything is just saved locally on your computer. So you can go to where they're saved on disk and then move that over to the new computer. We also have the LM Studio Hub, which is a sharing platform. So if, let's say, you were to create some sort of system prompt, Hank went through a bunch of good system prompts. We definitely recommend play with those because it gives the model extra personality or information. You can actually upload those to the hub, save them there. If you have an account, it's not required, but if you want to be able to share things, and then you can pull that down into a new laptop so you don't lose it. But there's a bunch of ways to make sure that you don't lose your work or your progress. We want to make sure things are transferable and can move between computers.
Actually, on that, as we're coming to the end, just a couple of things I wanted to kind of go through. Julian mentioned the hub. James, if you can there we go. Bring my screen back up. Oh, good. Awesome. Fantastic. So what we've got is we created a hub page for Learn with Cisco, and I've gone ahead and uploaded a handful of presets that include system prompts for different types of use cases. So that network assistant one that I used in the demonstration, I've uploaded if you want to experiment with that. I've also added one if you want to, if you're studying for the CCNA and you want to kind of get some question and answers, right? I've got an example prompt you can use to do as part of your studying. And then if you are looking at kind of maybe some MCP server development, Joe Clark on our team has published a public MCP server for CML. So I've got a prompt that you can use for that. And so this is an area where you can go ahead and get started by using those hub resources that have been made available, or the hub has been made available by the folks at LM Studio, but anybody can create and share these resources out there. You're not required, no cost for any of those. And then the last thing I want to do just before we fully close down is, as Matt mentioned, you can download these slides from the discussion boards and through the links that are available. And inside of the slides, you'll find a handful of useful links that I collected where you can go to the LM Studio homepage. We've got tutorials up on Cisco U that will help you get started with LM Studio running local LLMs on your laptops. And then I've got a couple of blogs I've written about my own journey into kind of doing agentic AI, a lot of those using LM Studio in these use cases. So these are some more links that you can dive into if you want to kind of learn a little bit more after the webinar today. But please join the discussion. Let us know how your own journey is going. All right, so Matt, I'll hand it back to you to kind of finish this up.
Yep, no worries. Thank you so much, Hank, and thank you, Julian. I think we'll pretty much wrap there in the interest of time. So I have a couple more questions in the Slido event that I'm going to move over to our post-event discussion thread, which once again, you'll see one of the two QR codes in the either below me or above me. I can't see quite which one it is yet, but below me, thank you. That will also get you to that post-event discussion thread and get you access to the download download the slides, as well as watch the replay of this video and etc. All of the resources that Hank mentioned. So definitely take a moment right now before the slide goes away to scan that QR code and pop into the community and keep us going with our conversation. And with that, Hank and Julian, thank you again so much. Any parting thoughts, last minute considerations for the audience?
Just go out and have fun with AI safely.
Yeah, please download LM Studio, give it a try. If you want to use any of the system prompts that Hank uploaded to the hub, you don't actually need an account to do that either. So you can just go in, click use in LM Studio and test them out.
Perfect. Thank you, Julian. Thank you, Hank. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you on the community.